The warship that shouldn't exist, but does. In the farthest reaches of the galaxy, on the edge of known space, there was a warship unlike any other. It was a thing of legends, a ship that should never have been built, a vessel that defied every law of physics, design, and the established order of the galaxy. And yet, it existed. The Excalibur. The story of the Excalibur began when humanity was still a young species, barely emerging from their primitive state. The Galactic Council, a coalition of the most advanced and powerful civilizations in the universe, had long written humanity off as a fledgling species destined to fade into the annals of history. Their technology was crude, their understanding of the cosmos limited, and their place among the stars insignificant. But humanity, in their stubbornness and ingenuity, had other ideas. The idea for the Excalibur came about after the humans had witnessed the power of the warships from the ancient and fearsome Viclari Empire, an alien race known for their unrivaled military prowess. Their ships were constructed from materials that seemed to defy the very fabric of reality, able to travel through wormholes and survive in the heart of supernovae. The Viclari were unbeatable, or so it seemed. When humanity's greatest minds were presented with the task of building a warship to defend their fledgling colonies from an impending Viclari invasion, they faced an impossible challenge. They had no chance of matching the Viclari's technology on equal terms, not by any conventional means. But humanity wasn't conventional. Dr. Elena Voss, a brilliant scientist and engineer from Earth, proposed something that no one else would have dared consider. If they couldn't surpass the Viclari's technology through traditional methods, why not create something entirely new? Something that had never been seen before, a warship powered by sheer willpower, humanity's greatest strength. It was an absurd idea, laughed off by most in the scientific community, but Elena, driven by a mixture of hope, desperation, and the belief in human potential, pushed forward. She theorized that if they could harness the full force of the human spirit, will, defiance, determination, it could power a ship that defied all the normal limitations of science and physics, something that could use human ingenuity and emotion as fuel. And so, the Excalibur was born. The design was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Its hull was constructed from a new alloy, a metal that absorbed and reflected energy like nothing known to science. The engines were powered not by traditional energy sources, but by a unique combination of human bioenergy and a cutting-edge AI system that evolved based on the thoughts and emotions of its crew. The ship's power source was a living, breathing entity, a fusion of human consciousness and machine, linked directly to the crew's minds. At first, it seemed like a ridiculous experiment, but the Excalibur was built, and the first test flight was an astonishing success. The ship responded to the crew's thoughts, adapting to their every need, as though it had a mind of its own. Its weapons, capable of firing bursts of concentrated energy, were powered by the crew's intent and resolve. The more passionate and determined the crew, the stronger the Excalibur became. When the Viclari arrived, confident in their victory, they found themselves facing an enemy unlike anything they had ever encountered. The first battle was a massacre. The Viclari fleet, renowned for its size and might, was obliterated by the Excalibur. It wasn't the technology of the ship that won the fight, but the sheer will of humanity. The Viclari's advanced weapons couldn't even scratch the Excalibur. The ship moved as though it could anticipate every move, every attack, and countered with precision. The Viclari couldn't comprehend what they were up against. It wasn't just a ship, it was the human spirit itself, embodied in a vessel of pure defiance. And from that day on, the Excalibur became more than just a weapon. It became a symbol. A symbol of what humanity could achieve when faced with the impossible. Word of the Excalibur spread across the galaxy, and it became a beacon of hope for every species that had ever been oppressed, underestimated, or on the brink of destruction. The ship wasn't just a tool of war, it was the embodiment of humanity's will to survive, to fight, and to thrive. The Galactic Council, once dismissive of humanity, now feared them. The Excalibur was the one warship that no one could ever replicate or defeat. It was a living, breathing testament to the strength of the human spirit. The Excalibur shouldn't have existed. It broke every rule of science, every law of logic, and every expectation of the galaxy. It was a ship that should have been nothing more than a dream, a fantasy, an impossibility. But it did exist. And in that existence, humanity proved that nothing was impossible. Not when the heart and will of the people were behind it. The Excalibur wasn't just a warship, it was a legacy of defiance, strength, and an unyielding belief that humanity could, against all odds, reshape the galaxy in their image. The warship that shouldn't exist, but does, continued. As the Excalibur ventured deeper into the galactic frontier, its legend only grew. What had once been considered an impossible anomaly became a source of inspiration, and not just for humans. In every corner of the galaxy, from the barren moons of the Zelenar to the glittering cities of the Clithery, whispers of the human warship and its miraculous feats spread like wildfire. The Viclari Empire, shaken by the destruction of their fleet, attempted to gather a coalition of their most advanced allies to confront humanity, but each attempt was thwarted, sometimes before they even arrived at the battlefield. The Excalibur's ability to outmaneuver their ships, predicting their every strategy with eerie precision, was enough to drive the once feared Viclari to desperation. They could never quite grasp how the ship worked, or more terrifyingly, how it seemed to be able to adapt to the thoughts and emotions of its crew. The crew, led by Captain Julian Westbrook, an unassuming but brilliant tactician, was just as much a part of the ship's success as the vessel itself. Captain Westbrook understood something that others didn't. What made the Excalibur invincible was not just its power, but the collective strength of the humans aboard it. The ship's bond with its crew was symbiotic. The more connected they were to each other and to their mission, the stronger the ship became. It wasn't just the ship that had been revolutionized, it was the very nature of warfare itself. The Excalibur had become an extension of its crew's thoughts and will, almost like an extension of the human soul. Each battle tested them more, but also forged their unity. The bond between the crew became something nearly supernatural, a level of camaraderie and trust that seemed to transcend the ordinary limits of human capacity. The ship thrived on their collective energy, the strength of their purpose, and their belief in humanity's right to exist as an equal among the stars. But it wasn't just the Viclari who feared them. The Excalibur and its crew had become so powerful, so unyielding, that some of the galaxy's other empires began to view humanity with suspicion. They saw in the Excalibur not a symbol of hope, but a threat to their own power. The vast and ancient Cartilan Dominion, whose influence spanned hundreds of star systems, viewed humanity's rise with growing unease. The Cartilan, masters of manipulation and covert warfare, knew that if humanity was allowed to continue to develop, they would one day rival even their own sophisticated intelligence networks. At a clandestine summit held deep within the Cartilan Council's secure space station, a group of Dominion elites made a decision that would set the stage for the next conflict. They would strike before humanity could truly ascend to a position of power. The Dominion's attack was swift and brutal. Using their vast network of spies and agents, they launched a surprise strike on humanity's core worlds, hitting civilian targets in a way that would shock and disorient the human colonies. Their ships, though technologically advanced, were not designed to withstand a direct confrontation with the Excalibur. But they did not intend to fight fair. Instead, they aimed to weaken humanity's resolve by targeting their families, their homeworlds, things that the Excalibur and its crew could not protect. The response from humanity was immediate. The Excalibur launched at full speed from its base, ready to exact retribution. But something had shifted. The crew had always drawn their strength from their unity, from their shared commitment to defending their people. But now, with so many lives lost, that unity was tested as never before. Captain Westbrook, standing at the helm of the Excalibur, could feel the ship's power surge in response to his own anger and determination. As the ship hurtled toward the Cartilan fleet, Westbrook issued the order to engage. The Excalibur unleashed everything it had, every ounce of human determination, every shred of the crew's anguish and resolve. The energy from their grief, their fear, and their fury poured into the ship's weapons systems. The entire battle unfolded in a blur of bright flashes and shattered starships. But there was something new now. Humanity had always fought for survival, but now, they were fighting for something more. They were fighting for their future, for the idea that they, despite all their flaws, their mistakes, and their early missteps, had the right to be here, to thrive, and to shape the galaxy in their image. In that moment, the Excalibur became more than just a ship. it became the embodiment of an idea that had echoed across every human heart since their earliest days, the belief that even the smallest, most fragile species could rise to greatness, that no empire, no power, no threat could break them. The Carthylan forces, in their cold and calculated way, began to retreat. The battle had been lost, yes, but it was not just the weapons that had defeated them. It was the power of an idea that they had never understood, the power of humanity's indomitable will to survive. As the Excalibur returned to its home base, triumphant but scarred, it was clear that the warship that shouldn't exist had now become something far greater than anyone had ever imagined. It was a symbol of resistance, of defiance, of hope, and of the unbreakable strength of a species that refused to bow to any force, no matter how great. The Excalibur wasn't just a ship, it was a movement that reminded the galaxy that when humans are backed into a corner, when their survival is at stake, they will rise, against all odds, against all expectations. And no one could ever forget it. The Excalibur had proven that the impossible could become real. And in the vast expanse of space, that was a message no one could ignore. The warship that shouldn't exist, but does, continued. The galaxy had not yet seen the full scope of the Excalibur's power, but the legend of the human warship had already begun to spread beyond the borders of known space. As the Excalibur returned to its homeworld, victory in hand but scars visible on both the ship and the crew, humanity's place in the cosmos was no longer uncertain. It was becoming clear that their race, though young in the grand timeline of the universe, was now a force to be reckoned with. The victory against the Carthylan Dominion was but one chapter in a much larger narrative. The Excalibur was not just a weapon, it was a catalyst. And as the galaxy began to reckon with this new power, old alliances shifted, and ancient rivalries flared once more. The Coalition of the Zeniths, a massive alliance of galactic civilizations dedicated to peace and stability, called an emergency summit. On one side of the table sat representatives of the human government, led by President Linda Chase, who had grown into a resolute leader after years of war and political maneuvering. On the other side sat the leaders of the Viclari, the Carthylan, and even factions from the once neutral Thraxian syndicate. There were two choices. First, they could continue their covert operations to undermine humanity, attempting to snuff out the embers of a species that now threatened their political dominion. Second, they could seek a more diplomatic solution, acknowledging the Excalibur's power and humanity's right to carve its own path. The second option was proposed by none other than Viszal, the former Viclari general who had witnessed firsthand the relentless might of the Excalibur. Viszal's voice was one of reluctant respect. You are no longer a minor species. Your warship, your Excalibur, proves that you have transcended the limits we once imposed on you. There is no choice now but to negotiate, to bring humanity into the fold of galactic politics. The Carthylan delegates scoffed at the idea. Their empire had long ruled through manipulation and subtlety. They believed that humanity's ascension to power was a threat to their entire way of life. Negotiate with the humans? Said Carthylan High Commandant Drivenar with a sneer. We do not negotiate with fledgling races who wield weapons they cannot even comprehend. It was then that Captain Westbrook, now celebrated as a hero across the colonies, stepped forward. He wasn't a diplomat, nor a politician, but his presence in the room commanded respect. He'd fought too many battles to be intimidated by the likes of the Carthylan, and he knew that the Excalibur had changed the balance of power forever. We're not asking for permission, Westbrook said, his voice steady but filled with resolve. We're not here to beg for a seat at your table. Humanity doesn't need to be part of your fold. We have our own path to follow. We didn't build the Excalibur to play by your rules. We built it to survive and to thrive. And that's exactly what we'll do, with or without your blessing. The room fell silent, the weight of his words sinking in. The humans were no longer just fighters. They were visionaries, creators, and innovators. The Excalibur had proven they could face the worst the galaxy had to offer and come out on top. The summit continued for days, but in the end, something shifted. The Zeniths, seeing humanity's undeniable strength, agreed to establish a new coalition, one that would be built on mutual respect, not dominance. Humanity, led by President Chase, would be given a seat at the table, alongside the Viclari, Carthylan, and all the other ancient species of the galaxy. But the terms were clear. Humanity's growing power would not be ignored, nor would it be restrained. In exchange for their place in the new coalition, humanity would agree to certain protections for its colonies, ensuring no one would target them again for fear of the Excalibur's wrath. Years passed, and the Excalibur continued to be a symbol, not just of military might, but of human ingenuity. The ship's design had been replicated by others, though none could match the unique connection between the vessel and its crew. The Excalibur had evolved too, adapting to new threats, exploring new frontiers, and leading humanity into a future that was no longer uncertain. New warships, now under development by human engineers, used similar biotechnological interfaces and cutting-edge materials, but none were quite as legendary. There were rumors, whispers in the corridors of power, that the Excalibur itself had developed beyond its original design. Some claimed the ship had become a sentient being, capable of independent thought. It was said that when a human crew member stepped aboard, they could hear voices in their minds, not just from the crew, but from the ship itself. It was the culmination of humanity's greatest triumph, merging the organic with the synthetic, the heart and mind of a species united into a single, unstoppable force. The Excalibur had become a reflection of humanity's greatest potential, proving that even in a universe filled with ancient, powerful empires, there was no limit to what they could achieve. The question of whether humanity could be contained, or whether they would be the next great power to dominate the galaxy, became irrelevant. The galaxy had changed. It would never be the same. And at the center of it all, shining like a beacon of hope, stood the Excalibur, a warship that shouldn't exist, but did. And as long as it did, the galaxy would never forget the humans who had made the impossible possible. The Excalibur had written its own legend, and humanity's future along with it. The warship that shouldn't exist, but does. The warship that shouldn't exist, but does. The final journey. In the wake of rejecting the Forerunner's control, the Excalibur and its crew found themselves at a crossroads. They had defied the ancient architects, spurning their offer of power, but that decision came at a cost. The galaxy, already uneasy with humanity's rise, now watched in anticipation as the human species stood alone, without the crutch of a higher power dictating their path. Humanity had only one thing left to rely on: themselves. The Excalibur was more than just a ship, it had become a symbol of what humanity was capable of, what they had already accomplished against all odds. But now, faced with the unknown, its future seemed uncertain. Captain Westbrook stood on the bridge, staring out at the stars. For the first time in years, he didn't have a clear direction. The galaxy was vast, filled with mysteries, dangers, and untold secrets. Humanity had carved its place, but was that enough? Would it be enough? Could they stand on their own in a universe that seemed determined to push them back? "We've done what no one thought we could," Westbrook murmured, more to himself than to his crew. Behind him, his first officer, Lieutenant Jara Tavros, approached, her expression thoughtful. "But now we have to decide what comes next. Sir, we've chosen a path that no one else is walking. We've rejected the Forerunners, but that doesn't mean we're free from their influence." "True," Westbrook said, running a hand through his hair, "but we've made our choice, and that choice is to face whatever comes with the full force of our will. It's time to stop reacting to what the galaxy throws at us, and start shaping our own destiny." The decision was made. The Excalibur would no longer be simply a weapon in a cosmic game of dominance. It would become a vessel for exploration, for diplomacy, for discovery. Humanity had always been a species that pushed forward, that reached for the stars and beyond, and now it was time to take that drive to the next level. As the crew gathered in the war room, a new sense of purpose filled the air. President Linda Chase, who had stood by humanity's side through the countless struggles, addressed the crew. "We are no longer just survivors. We are creators, innovators. We've proven we can stand against the galaxy's oldest empires, but we can do more than fight. We can build a new future, a future where humanity doesn't just exist among the stars, but helps to shape the future of this galaxy." The mission was clear. The Excalibur would begin an unprecedented journey, traveling to the deepest, most mysterious corners of the galaxy. They would seek knowledge, allies, and resources, not for conquest, but for a future built on the idea that even in a universe as old as time itself, humanity's place could be more than just a footnote. They would forge alliances, help those in need, and confront any existential threat with a unity and strength no one could match. As the Excalibur moved into the uncharted void, the crew discovered new civilizations, ancient artifacts, and challenges that pushed them to the edge of their limits. Each new encounter brought with it a deeper understanding of the universe, and with each new victory, humanity's reputation grew. The ship, once feared for its destructive power, became a symbol of peace and possibility. But there were still those who watched from the shadows, empires like the Viclari and Cartilan, who had once seen humanity as little more than a nuisance, now saw them as a serious threat, not because of their warships or their weapons, but because of their ideas. The Excalibur was not just a ship of war, it was a vessel of change, one that could turn the galaxy on its head if it succeeded in its mission to spread humanity's influence without the threat of destruction. It wasn't long before another faction, one that had long existed outside the known territories, took notice of the Excalibur's progress, the Zinthrax, a race as old as the stars themselves. The Zinthrax had long operated from the shadows, manipulating events on a scale most could never perceive. They were an ancient and powerful collective of minds, their civilization predating even the Forerunners. They saw humanity as a new and unpredictable variable, one that could either be the galaxy's salvation or its undoing. When they finally made contact, it was not with weapons or threats, but with a proposal. They did not want to destroy humanity, as the older empires had tried. They wanted to understand it. The Zinthrax had spent millennia studying the development of species and their potential. But humanity was different. The Excalibur had shown them something they had never anticipated, a species that would not simply submit to the galaxy's natural order, but would rewrite the rules entirely. "We have been watching you," the Zinthrax representative, a being of shifting energy, said during their first meeting. "You are not like the others. Your species does not follow the cycle. You are disruptive, but your potential, it is unlike anything we have ever seen." The crew of the Excalibur stood before them, unsure of what to make of the Zinthrax. These were beings who had seen empires rise and fall, whose intelligence spanned eons. But there was one thing they had never anticipated, a species that could stand toe-to-toe with them, not through power or technology, but through the sheer will to exist, to grow, and to shape the future on their own terms. "We are offering you a place among us," the Zinthrax continued, "not as a subordinate race, but as equals. If you choose, we will grant you the knowledge of the cosmos, the key to all the mysteries of existence." Westbrook, ever the skeptic, took a deep breath. "And if we refuse?" he asked. The Zinthrax being seemed almost amused. "Then you will continue your journey, as you have. But understand this, there are forces in the galaxy that fear what you represent, and those forces may one day come together to stop you." The threat was clear, but Westbrook's resolve was stronger. "Then we will face them, as we always have, together." And so, humanity's journey continued. The Excalibur would not be just a warship. It would be the harbinger of a new age, a new way of thinking in the galaxy, where power would no longer be measured in weapons or empires, but in the ability to shape one's own destiny. The warship that shouldn't have existed, one that defied the odds and rewrote history, had become the symbol of something greater, not just a species' survival, but their ascension. And as the stars burned brightly in the vast reaches of space, one thing was certain, humanity had only just begun. The warship that shouldn't exist, but does. The endless horizon. As the Excalibur soared across the cosmos, the weight of its mission had only grown heavier. With each new encounter, each new revelation, the crew felt the enormity of their role. What had begun as a warship designed for survival had evolved into the vanguard of a new era. Humanity was no longer just a survivor, clinging to life in a hostile galaxy. It was now a species with a future of its own making, its own vision, its own destiny. However, the road ahead was never going to be easy. The Zinthrax's offer, one of knowledge, power, and understanding, loomed over humanity like a question mark. Their invitation was alluring. They offered an understanding of the mysteries of the universe that could elevate humanity to unimaginable heights. But to accept that offer meant bending to their will, becoming part of their ancient and secretive collective, and losing the one thing that had defined humanity's rise, independence. Captain Westbrook had spent sleepless nights considering the choice. To the crew, the decision felt like the next test of their resolve. Were they ready to truly ascend, or were they content with their path, carving out a future defined not by the ancient forces of the galaxy, but by their own hands? But there was a tension in the air. As much as humanity had proven its strength, unity, and adaptability, there was a growing realization that the galaxy was not just a place to survive, it was a place that could either uplift or crush them. The older empires, the ones that had once dismissed humanity as insignificant, were beginning to rally against this rise of a species that had turned the tides in their favor. The Kartilan, the Viklari, the Zeniths, all the great galactic powers that had watched humanity's ascent with a mixture of fear, curiosity, and disdain, were starting to organize. They didn't want to share the galaxy with humanity. They had seen what happened when humans, unencumbered by ancient codes and power structures, were allowed to create without restraint. If humanity continued on its current trajectory, they would no longer just be a new player in the galactic theater, they would become the dominant force, the new architects of the universe's future. One such power, the Viklari Empire, moved first. In the shadow of the Excalibur's triumphs, a new war fleet was formed, vast and terrifying. It was engineered to challenge the Excalibur directly. The Viklari had always believed themselves to be the ultimate military force, with weapons, strategies, and technologies unmatched in their power. Yet in their arrogance, they had underestimated the adaptability and tenacity of humanity. The Excalibur's sensors picked up the fleet's approach before it even entered the system. The Viklari had come, not with an invitation for peace, but with an ultimatum: humanity must submit to the will of the galactic powers or face annihilation. Westbrook stood on the bridge, staring at the incoming fleet as his crew prepared for battle. They were ready. The Excalibur had proven time and again that it could adapt, evolve, and face overwhelming odds. But this time, it felt different. The question that loomed in the air was not just whether they could defeat the Viklari, it was whether humanity was ready for what would come after. "We've come a long way," Westbrook said, his voice steady, "but this is more than a fight for survival. This is a fight for the future, for the freedom to choose our own path." Tavros, his trusted first officer, nodded. "If they want a war, Captain, we'll give them one. But we need to remember, we aren't just fighting for ourselves anymore. We're fighting for every species that wants to be free of the old ways." Westbrook turned to the crew. "This isn't about winning a single battle. This is about proving that humanity has a place in this galaxy, a place where we're free to forge our own destiny." With that, the Excalibur engaged, and the battle for the future of the galaxy began. The Excalibur's response was immediate, but it was not the brute force the Viklari had expected. The ship moved with the grace of a predator, its advanced weapons systems dishing out devastating strikes that crippled the Viklari fleet's most advanced ships in mere moments. But as the battle raged on, Westbrook knew that brute force alone would not win the war. The Viklari would continue to come, and their strength, while impressive, was not the true threat. The real danger lay in the philosophical divide. The Viklari wanted control. They wanted to maintain the status quo of galactic power, where the few ruled over the many, and the cycle of dominance and submission persisted. Humanity, on the other hand, stood for something radically different. They didn't want to conquer, they wanted to explore, to innovate, to build something new that was based on freedom and the pursuit of knowledge. And in that moment, Westbrook realized what the Excalibur truly was. It was more than a weapon. It was a symbol of humanity's refusal to bow to the structures of old, to the ancient ways that had held the galaxy in thrall for eons. The Viklari's military might was formidable, but it was not enough to defeat the Excalibur and its crew. With every engagement, the Viklari fleet crumbled, until they were forced to retreat. But the victory was not just a military one, it was a victory of ideals. The Excalibur's influence spread across the galaxy, and with it, a new vision began to take hold. Humanity's refusal to submit to the old powers had inspired those who had been oppressed by them. A coalition of systems, planets, and species that had long been under the thumb of the Viklari, the Kartilan, and other empires, began to rise. The battle was not over. The old empires would not relinquish their hold on the galaxy easily, but for the first time, the idea of a future where humanity could stand alongside the stars on their own terms, forging alliances, and shaping their own destiny, felt real. The Excalibur had proven that humanity could not only survive in the galaxy but could thrive. challenging the established order and showing that the future belonged to those bold enough to create it. The Excalibur continued its journey, venturing further into the unknown, its crew united by their shared purpose. They had faced impossible odds, defied ancient powers, and emerged victorious, but their journey was far from over. As they sailed into the uncharted depths of space, with the stars ahead still full of mysteries to uncover, one thing was certain: humanity would no longer be a footnote in the galactic history. They were here to stay. And they would carve their own place in the stars, no matter the cost. The Excalibur wasn't just a ship. It was humanity's legacy, a testament to the strength of the human spirit. And it was just beginning its final journey. The warship that shouldn't exist had become the future. And the universe would never forget it. The warship that shouldn't exist, but does. The new dawn. The Excalibur glided through the void, its sleek silhouette a constant reminder of the journey humanity had undertaken. Though the battle for survival against the Viclari and the older empires had been won, there was a far greater war ahead, one not of weapons and ships, but of ideas. The galaxy was a vast place, filled with ancient wisdom, but also plagued by centuries of oppression and outdated systems of control. Humanity, led by the Excalibur and its crew, was about to become the spark that would ignite a new chapter in galactic history. Captain Westbrook stood at the helm, staring out into the infinite expanse. His thoughts were not consumed by the recent victory, but by the realization of how much more there was to do. They had proven their strength and their resolve, but the galaxy was full of challenges that would test their ideals in ways they couldn't predict. "We've done it," Tavros said, standing next to him, her eyes fixed on the star-filled horizon. "We've shown them what we're capable of, but now, we need to show them what we stand for." Westbrook nodded. "Exactly. Winning a battle is one thing, but changing the galaxy, reshaping the future, that's a whole other challenge. And it's a challenge that's not won by force, it's won by courage, unity, and the will to create something better." The Excalibur's mission was no longer just about protecting humanity or maintaining its place in the galaxy. It had become something more, something far greater. It was now tasked with spreading humanity's vision, a future where power wasn't held by ancient empires, but where all species could be free to explore, grow, and shape their own destinies. A future where the cycles of oppression and dominance could be broken. As the Excalibur traveled deeper into the galaxy, its reputation continued to grow. The ship and its crew became known not as conquerors, but as visionaries. Their message spread to planets and systems that had long been under the control of the galaxy's empires. People who had lived in the shadow of tyrannical rule began to rise, inspired by humanity's example of defiance and self-determination. But not everyone was happy with the changes. The old empires, particularly the Cartilan and the Viclari, saw this new era as a threat to their way of life. They had lived for millennia, ruling through manipulation, fear, and dominance. And the idea of losing that power was unacceptable to them. The galaxy's most powerful factions began to stir in the shadows, forming coalitions to push back against humanity's growing influence. The Zinthrax, the ancient race who had offered humanity the keys to universal knowledge, began to distance themselves. They had offered their guidance, but they had also seen something in humanity's rebellion that troubled them. Their collective, which had once seen itself as the ultimate arbiters of the galaxy, now viewed humanity's refusal to accept their guidance as a challenge. It was clear that humanity would not fit into the neat, controlled order the Zinthrax had envisioned. Their place in the galaxy, and their future, was now uncertain. But humanity had something that none of these empires or ancient powers could understand: a drive to create, to build, and to choose their own fate. That drive had become a force in and of itself. Years passed, and the Excalibur led the charge in uniting systems and species under the banner of freedom. The crew forged new alliances with races that had once been considered insignificant. They formed coalitions with those who were tired of being pawns in the game of galactic powers. They helped rebuild worlds torn apart by war, providing not just military aid, but the resources and knowledge necessary to create a new future. In the far reaches of the galaxy, the first true independent human colonies were established. These colonies were not military outposts, but thriving centers of research, culture, and progress. They became the epicenter of a new movement, one that transcended borders. species, and ancient power structures. The idea of a peaceful, self-determined galaxy, where all beings could exist freely and without fear of domination, began to take hold. But despite all the successes, the shadow of the old empires loomed large. The Excalibur had proven that humanity could stand toe-to-toe with the galaxy's greatest powers. But the threat of war was never far behind. The Viclari, particularly, had begun to mobilize their forces once more, this time not to crush humanity, but to ensure their own survival. They believed that the human spirit, so unyielding and innovative, could not be allowed to grow unchecked. Their fears were not unfounded. The rise of the human colonies and the spread of their message had begun to inspire a growing rebellion within the ranks of the galaxy's older empires. Systems that had long been subjugated began to question their rulers, demanding change and autonomy. It was in this moment of fragile hope and ever-present danger that Westbrook and his crew were called to make the hardest decision of all. The Excalibur had entered a new system, one that had been caught in the crossfire of the ongoing war between the old empires and the rising tide of independence. The system's star was dying, its planets suffocating under the weight of a failing economy and centuries of mismanagement by the Cartilan Empire. Its people were oppressed, its resources drained, and yet, they held on, waiting for something to change. The decision was clear. Humanity could step in and help. They could offer aid, technology, and knowledge, giving the people of the system a chance to break free from the Cartilan's grasp. But there would be consequences. The Cartilan would retaliate, and the Zinthrax would likely take action to keep the balance of power intact. The crew was divided. Some wanted to help, others feared the repercussions. But Westbrook stood firm. This is what we've always fought for. We're not just fighting for humanity anymore. We're fighting for every species, every system, and every person who deserves the right to choose their future. With that, the Excalibur launched its most ambitious operation yet, one that would test not just their military might, but their ideals. It wasn't about domination. It was about giving others the chance to stand alongside them, to create a future that was built on freedom and collaboration, not on power and subjugation. As the operation unfolded, the old empires mobilized, but the people of the system fought back, inspired by humanity's example. In the end, the Cartilan were forced to withdraw, and the system declared its independence. It was a small victory, but it was a symbol of something much larger. The Excalibur continued its journey, its mission clearer than ever. Humanity was no longer just a species among many, it was a beacon of hope for the galaxy. The warships, the battles, the conflicts, they were no longer the story. What mattered now was the vision, a galaxy united not by force, but by the will to create something better, something greater. The Excalibur had proven that even in a galaxy ruled by ancient powers, the most important thing was not who held the greatest weapon, but who had the courage to change the game entirely. The ship that shouldn't exist, that defied every law of the cosmos, had become the force that would shape the galaxy's future. And in that new dawn, the universe knew one thing for certain: humanity was just getting started. The warship that shouldn't exist had ignited a revolution. And the galaxy would never be the same again.